The year was 322 BC. The great conqueror Alexander the Great was dead. His empire, stretching from Greece to India, had begun to fracture. But in the chaos, a new voice emerged. A woman's voice. A voice that whispered from the shadows, "I am Olympias, mother of Alexander, and I have returned." The problem? Olympias had already been executed years ago. Olympias, the real mother of Alexander, was one of the most feared women in ancient Greece. She was said to have worshipped serpents, practiced secret rites of Dionysus, and claimed her son was not born of King Philip II, but of Zeus himself. When Alexander died in Babylon in 323 BC, Olympias tried to secure power for his infant son, Alexander IV. But her enemies caught her, and in 316 BC, she was executed by stoning in Pydna. Her body was left unburied, denied royal honors. History closed its pages on her story, or so it seemed. Several years later, in a small village near Epirus, a group of Macedonian soldiers stumbled upon a woman traveling with a caravan of priests and mercenaries. She was cloaked, veiled, and carried herself with the authority of a queen. When asked who she was, she removed her veil and declared before all, "Do you not recognize your queen? I am Olympias, mother of Alexander." The soldiers laughed at first, until she began to speak. She told them things only the royal family could know. How Philip's lion emblem was burned into his sword's hilt. How Alexander's tutor, Aristotle, once taught him that a man who conquers himself conquers the world. And how Alexander's first scar came from a training spear at age 12. She knew everything. Names, secrets, gestures, even the way Alexander's eyes twitched when angry. And then came a most disturbing part. She looked just like Olympias. Witnesses later described her as majestic yet terrifying. Her face, her height, even her piercing gray eyes, identical to the late queen. Some claimed she bore the same tattoo of a serpent coiling around her wrist, a mark known only to those initiated in the cult of Dionysus. Rumors spread like wildfire. Could Olympias have survived? Had she faked her death to one day reclaim her son's throne? The Macedonian army was divided. Some called her a fraud. Others, desperate for the glory of the old days, believed her. To prove her claim, the woman made a bold declaration. She would go to the Oracle of Dodona, one of Greece's most ancient shrines, and let the gods themselves decide her fate. When she arrived, thousands gathered, soldiers, priests, and peasants. The priests of Dodona asked her to speak her lineage before the sacred oak of Zeus. She stepped forward and proclaimed, "I was chosen by Zeus through the thunder that struck my womb. And from that fire was born Alexander, son of the god, conqueror of the world." Thunder rumbled across the mountains. The crowd fell silent. Some swore the leaves of the sacred oak whispered her name. The priests declared that the gods had indeed spoken, and that this woman carried the divine mark of the true Olympias. From that moment, the woman was treated as royalty. Cities opened their gates to her. Old generals, men who had once marched under Alexander's banner, came to her aid. She spoke of a vision, that Alexander's soul could not rest until his empire was restored. She promised that she, his mother, would find the heir, unite the lands, and purge the traitors who had betrayed her son. And slowly, people began to believe. They called her Basilisa Phantasma, the Phantom Queen. Her return did not go unchallenged. A Macedonian noble named Cassander, who had once fought against Olympias, ordered her arrest. But when his men approached her camp, they found her sitting calmly by a burning altar, surrounded by snakes, chanting in a tongue no one recognized. When they hesitated, she looked at them and said, "Would you raise your hands against the mother of your god?" Half the soldiers fled. The rest swore allegiance on the spot. That night, Cassander's envoys were found dead, their tongues removed, their eyes wide open, each body coiled by a serpent. The legend had begun. By dawn, People whispered that Alexander's spirit had returned, that his mother had come back from the underworld to avenge him. But who was she really? A madwoman? A forgotten relative? Or something far more dangerous? A living embodiment of the myth that had built Alexander's empire? The truth would only come when she reached Macedonia and confronted the men who once buried her. The woman's arrival in Macedonia was like the return of a ghost. Everywhere she went, temples reopened, and the people hailed her as Basilisa, the queen returned. Yet behind the whispers of devotion was fear. Because if this woman truly was Olympias, then every ruler who had risen after Alexander's death was a traitor to the divine bloodline. And if she wasn't, then someone had built a perfect illusion that even the gods seemed to protect. By now, the mysterious queen had gathered nearly 5,000 followers, mercenaries, priests, and peasants who believed she carried Alexander's blessing. She demanded audience with Polyperchon, one of Alexander's surviving generals and the official regent of Macedonia. Polyperchon, old and suspicious, agreed to meet her in Pella, the former royal capital. When the veiled woman entered the throne hall, she didn't bow. Instead, she sat directly on the throne that once belonged to Philip II. The guards stepped forward, but Polyperchon stopped them. The woman began to speak, recounting events from 30 years before. The night of Philip's assassination, the secret chambers of Dion, even the exact words of Alexander's farewell to his mother before leaving for Asia. Polyperchon's face turned pale. Only the real Olympias could have known those things. Or someone who had read her private letters. The next day, she made a request that chilled even her followers. She demanded to be taken to Pydna, the site of Olympias' supposed execution. When they reached the ruins, she ordered the soldiers to dig. Hours passed under the blazing Macedonian sun until one of them cried out. His spade had struck stone. They unearthed the tomb, sealed but desecrated, its inscriptions eroded. Inside lay only fragments of bone, scattered, broken, unrecognizable. At the entrance, carved faintly into the stone, was a single name, Olympias. The woman knelt beside it, touched the dust, and whispered, "They thought they killed me, but I do not die." She then turned to her followers and said, "Let these bones rest. The soul has returned." That night, a strange storm swept across the Macedonian plain. Lightning split the sky, and the people swore they heard a woman's laughter carried by the wind. But her power had begun to threaten the ruling generals. Cassander, who controlled much of Greece, denounced her as a fraud, a dangerous impostor trying to seize the throne. He demanded a trial to expose her before all. It was held in the ancient city of Amphipolis, under the watch of priests, soldiers, and nobles. Cassander entered with his witnesses, those who had seen Olympia's body after her execution. They swore she had been stoned to death. The woman listened silently. Then she rose and said, "If I am false, let the gods strike me down before I finish this sentence." The crowd held its breath. A rumble shook the sky, thunder, distant but real. Then a sudden gust of wind extinguished every torch in the hall. Panic spread. When the torches were relit, Cassander's chief witness was lying dead, his neck twisted, his eyes wide open. No one could explain how, but from that day on, even Cassander began to speak her name with caution. Her influence grew like wildfire. Within months, she had the loyalty of several Macedonian towns and a small army of loyal veterans who once served Alexander. They called themselves the Sons of Zeus-Ammon, after the god Alexander claimed as his father. The woman led them with a ferocity that shocked even her own generals. She rode into battle wearing a serpent crown, carrying a bronze scepter said to have belonged to the oracle of Siwa, the same oracle that once called Alexander the son of the god. Her enemies began to fall, one by one. In Pieria, she executed those who refused to kneel before her. In Edessa, she burned the estates of Cassander's allies. And wherever she went, Strange things happened. Storms would rise suddenly, torches would extinguish on their own, and snakes, sacred to Dionysus, were found coiled around the altars at dawn. One night, an old man arrived at her camp, blind, barefoot, dressed in rags. He claimed to be a former priest of Dodona, the same oracle that had once proclaimed her divine. He asked to speak with her alone. When the guards hesitated, she nodded. Inside her tent, witnesses claimed to hear whispering, then screaming, and then silence. The next morning, the old man was gone, but the queen emerged pale, trembling, and refused to speak for 3 days. When she finally did, she said only, "The gods lie. The truth is not divine. It is human." No one dared ask what she meant. As Cassander prepared his final campaign against her, she sent him a letter sealed with green wax. It contained only one line. "When you buried Olympius, did you check for eyes were closed?" Cassander reportedly burned the letter without reading it twice. But from that day forward, he slept with a sword beside his bed. And yet, even as her army advanced, even as her legend spread across the old empire, there were signs that the illusion was beginning to unravel. Whispers spread that she never removed her cloak in daylight, that her skin bore scars like old ritual markings, and that sometimes, when she spoke Alexander's name, her voice changed, deeper, heavier, almost as if another spirit spoke through her. Who was she really? A survivor? A fraud? Or something far more disturbing? A woman who believed so completely in the myth that it became real? The answer would come not from men, but from the tomb that once held Alexander himself. The rumor began in whispers, in the marketplaces of Pella, in the temples of Dion, and among the soldiers who had followed her. The Phantom Queen, the woman who claimed to be Olympius, was seeking something hidden beneath the sands of Egypt. She said it was the only proof left that she spoke the truth, that she was the mother of Alexander the Great, and that her son's soul was not at rest. But her true aim was darker than anyone imagined. In 318 BC, her army crossed the Aegean under the cover of night, heading south. The generals thought she was retreating, but she was following the same route Alexander took to the Oracle of Siwa in the Libyan desert, the place where Alexander was told he was the son of Zeus Ammon. Ancient texts said the oracle guarded a secret chamber, a second tomb, built in the likeness of the conqueror himself. If she could reach it, she believed she could call his spirit back. And so, with a handful of priests and loyal guards, she disappeared into the desert. Days passed, then weeks. Half her men died of thirst. The rest swore they saw strange lights on the horizon, like torches moving beneath the sand. On the 15th night, they found it. A ruined temple, half buried, its pillars carved with twin symbols, the serpent of Dionysus and the ram horns of Zeus Ammon. Inside, they found a door sealed with gold dust and resin. Across it were engraved words in Greek. "The living may enter, but only the dead shall return." They broke through at dawn. The air inside was cold, dry, untouched for centuries. At the center lay a stone sarcophagus, its lid shaped like the face of a young man. "Alexander." The woman approached, removed her cloak, and placed her hand upon the stone. Her followers fell silent. She whispered, "I brought you into this world, my son. Now bring me into yours." Then she ordered the priests to seal the entrance. Her soldiers protested, but she raised her hand and said, "Do not fear. When I return, the gods will walk with me." The door was closed. Hours passed, then screams, the sound of stone grinding, and silence. When the priests finally broke through, the chamber was empty. The sarcophagus was shattered, and carved into the wall, in fresh blood, were the words, "The Queen walks again." Days later, in the city of Memphis, merchants reported seeing a veiled woman standing near the Nile at sunrise. She was barefoot, her skin pale as ivory, her eyes bright and gray. When asked who she was, she replied, He sleeps beneath me. The world will know when he wakes." Her hands were covered in dust and blood, and around her wrist coiled a living serpent, marked with golden scales. When local soldiers tried to arrest her, a sudden sandstorm swept through the riverbank, fierce enough to tear sails from boats and blind men where they stood. When it cleared, she was gone. Some say she crossed the desert again and vanished into the ruins of Siwa. Others say she died that day, swallowed by the storm. But a few, the ones who claimed to have looked into her eyes, swore that she was not human anymore. Months later, a courier brought a sealed urn to Cassandra's palace in Pella. Inside it was a lock of hair, pale, streaked with dust, and a single parchment written in Greek. It read, "You built your empire on my son's bones. Now the earth beneath you remembers him." That night, an earthquake struck northern Macedonia, collapsing part of Cassandra's palace. His counselors begged him to leave the capital, but he refused. Within a year, Cassandra died of a mysterious illness, his body covered in black sores. The people whispered it was the curse of the queen, and though her body was never found, the priests of Dodona claimed that her spirit had been seen wandering the old royal tombs, searching for her son. Over the centuries, stories of the Queen of Shadows spread across the Hellenic world. Roman historians mention her as the ghost of Epirus. Arab chroniclers later described her as a sorceress who could command serpents and walk between the living and the dead. And some said that when Alexander's tomb vanished from history, she took it with her to keep her son's rest untouched by men. But even today, in the deserts of Siwa, locals tell travelers a warning. When the moon is high and the sands turn silver, a woman walks alone, whispering to the wind. She is searching for her son, and if you speak his name, she will ask if you remember her face. No one knows what she really was, a deluded impostor, a survivor of a royal bloodline, or something ancient that refused to die. But one truth remains. The legend of Alexander the Great did not end with his death. It lived on in the woman who dared to call herself his mother.